The Age of Forgetting. The evening sun cast golden light across New Geneva's crystalline towers as Mira Castellan closed another ancient data file. Her office in the historical archive sat high enough to see the orbital elevators stretching into the darkening sky. Thin lines connecting Earth to the stars humanity had reached without conquest. Still buried in the past? James's voice made her smile before she turned. He leaned against the doorframe, his engineer's uniform dusty from a day maintaining the orbital platforms. Someone has to remember, Mira said, though her tone was gentle. She rose to meet him, and his arms wrapped around her waist with familiar warmth. Remember what? Peace? He kissed her forehead. That's not exactly difficult. We've had 3,000 years of it, Mira wanted to argue, but his lips found hers and the words dissolved. They had been together for 2 years, and she still felt that flutter when he touched her. Their relationship had bloomed slowly, carefully, like everything in this age of gentleness. Later, on her apartment balcony overlooking the city, they shared wine and comfortable silence. James traced patterns on her arm absently. What were you really looking at today? Mira hesitated. I found something odd. Encrypted files from the First Peace Council. They referenced something called the Covenant of Silence. Sounds ominous. That's just it. Why would peace need a covenant? Why would it need secrecy? She turned to face him. James, what if we don't know our own history as well as we think? He pulled her closer. Does it matter? We're happy. The world is happy. Maybe some things are better left buried. She wanted to believe him. In the distance, children played in floating parks, their laughter carried on the wind. Humanity had built paradise. They had eliminated war, hunger, disease. They explored the galaxy as students, not conquerors. But that night, Mira dreamed of fire. The next morning, alarms shattered the peace. Long-range sensors detected a fleet approaching Earth. Not explorers. Not traders. Warships. Hundreds of them, bearing the crimson insignia of the Zethran Empire. The message that followed was simple. Surrender your world, or watch it burn. In her archives, Mira's terminal lit with urgent priority. The encrypted files she'd found were unlocking themselves, one by one. The first line made her blood run cold. If you are reading this, the silence has been broken. May forgiveness find us for what we must become again. James called, his voice tight with fear. Mira, they're evacuating the orbital stations. I'm coming to get you. Through her window, she could see the stars disappearing, blotted out by an armada that thought humanity had forgotten how to fight. They were about to learn how wrong they were. But first, they would learn why humanity had tried so hard to forget. The breaking storm war Marshal Dravok stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Crimson Talon, watching Earth grow larger in the view screen. Beside him, Huntress Cyrex examined her bladed gauntlets with casual confidence. They haven't even raised shields, Cyrex observed, her voice lilting with amusement. This will be over before midday. Dravok nodded, though something gnawed at him. In his 60 years of conquest, he had crushed 47 worlds. Each had fought back immediately, desperately. But the humans simply watched. Their cities glittered peacefully below, as if unaware of the doom descending upon them. Begin landing operations, he commanded. Take their capitals first. Make examples. On Earth, chaos erupted in waves. James reached Mira's archives as evacuation sirens wailed through the streets. She was frantically downloading files onto portable drives, her hands shaking. Mira, we have to go now! These files, James. They're instructions. Coordinates. There's something beneath the city, something they buried. An explosion rattled the building. Through the windows, they saw Zethran dropships descending like burning meteors. James grabbed Mira's hand, pulling her toward the emergency exits. They ran through streets flooding with panicked civilians. Families clutched children. Elderly citizens moved too slowly. Everyone had the same bewildered expression. This couldn't be happening. War was something from history books, not their reality. At the evacuation point, soldiers in ceremonial uniforms, humanity hadn't needed real military dress in centuries, tried to maintain order. James held Mira tight, breathing hard. The next transport goes to the southern shelters. I have to stay. Help shut down the orbital platform safely. No! Mira gripped his jacket. Come with me. He cupped her face, memorizing every detail. If those platforms fall, they'll crash into the cities. Millions will die. His kiss was desperate, trembling. I love you. I'll find you, I promise. Before she could protest, soldiers ushered her toward the transport. She screamed his name, reaching back, but the crowd pushed forward. The last thing she saw was James standing alone, watching her go. The transport descended into tunnels that seemed to stretch forever. When Mira finally emerged, she found herself in a cavern so vast its ceiling disappeared into darkness. Ancient machinery lined the walls, dormant but somehow alive, humming with potential energy. A woman in an unfamiliar black uniform approached. She was perhaps 60, with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much.
Mira Castellan?
I'm General Octavia Reed. Your grandmother told me you'd come eventually. My grandmother? She died when she was a keeper, as was I. As are you, though you didn't know it. Octavia gestured at the awakening machinery. For 3,000 years we've guarded this secret. Hoped we'd never need it again. What is this place? Our memory, Octavia said quietly. Our shame, our survival. She pressed a control panel and holographic displays flickered to life, showing ancient battles of unimaginable brutality. We nearly destroyed ourselves, Mira. We became so good at war that we almost erased humanity from existence. So we made a choice. We buried our weapons, edited our history, and swore never to fight again. But now we have no choice. Octavia's expression hardened. The covenant is broken. The weapons are waking. And soon, very soon, the galaxy will remember why they should have left us alone. Above them, deeper in the facility, something massive stirred. The sound was like a sleeping god opening its eyes. The awakening Fury Commander Takeshi Nomura hadn't expected to wake up. He'd entered cryosleep 3,000 years ago, a young soldier of 28, believing humanity's violent age had ended forever. Now alarms screamed through his pod chamber, and revival protocols flooded his system with burning clarity. He gasped awake, his body remembering youth while his mind carried the weight of ancient wars. Around him, 50 other pods hissed open. The defensive core, warriors humanity had preserved like shameful relics, praying they'd never be needed. Status, Takeshi croaked, his voice rusty from millennia. Zethran invasion force, a calm, artificial voice reported. Primary cities under assault. Civilian casualties mounting. Authorization code Omega confirmed. You are reactivated. Takeshi stood on legs that remembered how to kill. Wake everyone. Full deployment. On the surface, Zethran soldiers swept through New Geneva's streets. Cyrex led her hunters with brutal efficiency, expecting humans to flee or beg. Instead, she found them staring with strange, quiet intensity. An older man stepped forward, unarmed. You should leave, Cyrex laughed. Or what, human? You'll bore us with philosophy? The ground beneath them shuddered. Panels in the street split open, and from the depths rose war machines that made Zethran technology look primitive. Sleek, angular, covered in weapons that hummed with barely restrained power. The old man's expression never changed. We tried to warn you. The machines opened fire. Cyrex barely dove aside as her entire squad was vaporized. She scrambled for cover, her confidence shattering. Impossible. They're pacifists! But the humans advancing through the smoke weren't pacifists anymore. They moved with lethal precision, their faces transformed by something primal. Takeshi's core had arrived, and they fought like humanity had never stopped. In the underground facility, Mira worked frantically at command stations, helping coordinate the awakening systems. Octavia barked orders, linking ancient networks to modern infrastructure. The contrast was jarring. Peaceful civilians trying to remember how to wage war. A communication came through. James's face appeared, streaked with ash.
Mira, thank God, James!
Relief flooded through her.
Where are you?
Orbital Platform 7. We've locked down the systems, but... His image shook as explosions rattled his location. There's a Zethran assault team heading my way. Get out of there! Can't. If I leave, they'll drop this platform on Sydney. 2 million people. He smiled, that gentle smile she loved. It's okay, just... Tell me you're safe. Tears blurred her vision. I'm coming for you. No, stay where you are. Let me do this. His voice softened. Mira, if this is it, know that loving you was the best thing I ever did. You made peace feel like enough. The connection cut off as another explosion rocked his platform. Mira screamed his name, but Octavia gripped her shoulder. We need you here. The weapon systems require an archivist, someone who understands the old codes. I have to help him. You help him by making sure his sacrifice matters. Mira wanted to argue, to run, to do anything but stand here while James faced death alone. But she looked at the screen showing cities burning, civilians dying, and forced herself to focus. Her hands flew across ancient controls, unlocking weapon systems that had slept for millennia. Above Earth, something massive detached from the dark side of the moon. The Remembrance, humanity's ancient flagship, had waited in silence for 3,000 years. Now its engines ignited, and it moved toward the Zethran fleet with predatory grace. On his command ship, Dravok watched it approach and felt fear for the first time in his career. What is that? His sensors couldn't identify it. The ship was older than his entire civilization, yet it radiated power that made his fleet look like toys. Cyrex, retreating from the surface with only a handful of survivors, answered his communication with wild eyes. Marshal, they're not what we thought. They're not peaceful. They're restrained. And we just broke their restraint. The Remembrance fired once. A single beam of concentrated energy that erased 3 Zethran battlecruisers in an instant. Dravok's hands trembled. What have we awakened? The truth revealed. The holographic records played in Mira's vision as she worked, fragments of humanity's darkest age flickering like ghosts. She saw cities turn to glass, planets cracked open, fleets numbering in the millions clashing in battles that lasted years. And everywhere, humans fighting with a savagery that made the Zethrans look gentle. We called it the Extinction War, Octavia said quietly beside her. Lasted 200 years. Started over resources, became about pride, ended with us nearly destroying ourselves and half the known galaxy. She gestured at the screens. By the end, we'd developed weapons that could unravel stars. We'd engineered soldiers who felt no mercy. We'd become monsters. So we chose to forget. We chose to become something else. To prove we could be more than killers. Octavia's voice cracked. For 3,000 years it worked. We became the healers, the builders, the dreamers. We showed the galaxy that evolution didn't have to mean conquest, until someone decided to test us, until someone forgot to fear us. A communication signal cut through their conversation. This is the Remembrance requesting docking clearance for command personnel. Mira's breath caught. The legendary ship was real, and it wanted to meet them. An hour later, she stood in a hangar as the ancient vessel's shuttle descended. The woman who emerged wore a uniform from another era. Her posture military perfect despite having been in cryosleep for millennia. Captain Helena Voss, she introduced herself, her eyes scanning the facility with professional assessment. Last commander of the First Fleet. I see they finally needed us again. Helena was perhaps 35 physically, but her eyes belonged to someone much older. She moved to the tactical displays with Takeshi, the 2 ancient soldiers falling into easy coordination. The Zethrans have numerical advantage, Takeshi noted, but their tactics are crude. They're used to fighting civilizations that never learned total war. We did, Helena said grimly. We perfected it, which is why we swore never to use it again. She looked at Mira. You're the archivist, the one who understands the old codes. Mira nodded, suddenly feeling very young and inexperienced. Helena's expression softened slightly. I had someone once. Before the long sleep, a scientist who believed we could be better. She touched a faded photograph printed on indestructible material. He's dust now. Everyone I knew is dust. But I wake up because people like you need protecting. You're worth everything, Helena interrupted. You represent what we fought to become. Peace isn't weakness, child. It's the hardest thing humanity ever achieved. She turned back to the displays. But peace only works when both sides choose it. The Zethrans chose war. Now they'll learn why that was a mistake. A priority alert flashed. James's orbital platform was falling, its orbit destabilizing. Mira's heart stopped. I can reach it, Takeshi said immediately. Military shuttle, full burn. You'll never make it in time, Helena calculated. Then I'll die trying. Takeshi was already moving. Mira grabbed his arm. Please, he's everything to me. The soldier's ancient eyes met hers, and she saw understanding there. Then I'll bring him back. That's a promise. As Takeshi launched toward orbit, the battle intensified. The Remembrance carved through Zethran lines while surface forces pushed the invaders back. But the cost was mounting. Human casualties climbed. Cities burned. The peace of 3,000 years was being paid for in blood. In space, Cyrex watched from her damaged cruiser. She'd captured human prisoners during the initial assault, scientists, teachers, ordinary people. They sat in her brig with quiet dignity, not begging or pleading, just watching her with patient eyes. One woman, elderly and calm, finally spoke. "You're wondering why we didn't fight back immediately." Cyrex said nothing. "Because we hoped you'd stop. We hoped you'd see civilians and children and choose mercy." The woman smiled sadly. "We hoped you were better than we used to be." "Your people are destroying us," Cyrex whispered. "No, we're remembering ourselves. There's a difference." The woman pressed her hand against the force field. "War Marshal Dravok thinks this is about conquest. It's not. It's about making sure the galaxy never forgets again, never assumes our peace means we can't protect ourselves." Cyrex felt something crack inside her certainty. "If you win, what then? Will you hunt us across the stars? Destroy our worlds? We'll let you leave. Because that's the difference between us and what we used to be." The woman's eyes held ancient sorrow. "We remember being monsters. We choose not to be." In orbit, Takeshi's shuttle reached the failing platform just as structural supports gave way. James was still at the controls, manually keeping systems online. Takeshi crashed through an airlock, moving with impossible speed, and physically dragged the engineer away as the platform began its final descent. They tumbled into the shuttle seconds before the platform broke apart. Takeshi piloted with one hand while keeping James from floating away with the other. "Mira," James gasped. "Is she safe and waiting for you?" When they docked at the underground facility, Mira was there. She and James collided in an embrace that spoke of relief, terror, and desperate love. They kissed like drowning people finding air, holding each other as if they could will the universe away. "I thought I'd lost you," Mira sobbed against his chest. I'm here. James pulled back just enough to see her face. "When this is over, marry me. I don't want to waste another second of whatever peace we have left." "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Around them, the machinery of war hummed. But in that moment, they held on to the memory of peace and the promise of a future beyond the fire. The New Covenant, the final battle, came on the third day. Dravok threw everything at Earth, his remaining fleet, his elite forces, orbital bombardment systems that could crack continents. He fought not for victory anymore, but for pride, refusing to be the first war marshal to retreat from peaceful prey. The Remembrance met his flagship in the space between Earth and its moon. Helena stood on the bridge, ancient and terrible, every movement precise. "Target their command structure," she ordered. "Minimal casualties. We're not trying to massacre them. Captain, they're not showing the same restraint." Her weapons officer noted. "That's why we're different." Helena's jaw tightened. "Fire." The beam lanced through space, surgically severing the Crimson Talon's weapon systems while leaving life support intact. Around them, Takeshi's reactivated fleet moved like choreographed death, dismantling Zethran formations with the ease of experience humanity had tried to forget. On the surface, Mira coordinated defensive batteries, her archival knowledge letting her understand 3,000-year-old targeting systems. James worked beside her, having refused to leave her side again. 3 more Zethran troop carriers inbound to Sector 7, she called out. "Batteries charging," James confirmed, his engineer's instincts adapting to warfare. "Ready on your mark." They worked in sync, 2 people of peace forced to remember war, and in quiet moments between crisis, their hands found each other. A touch, a glance, promises that this nightmare wouldn't define them. Octavia watched them with bittersweet recognition. She'd had someone once, 3,000 years ago. Another keeper. They'd promised to wake together if war returned, but his pod had failed sometime in the long sleep. She fought now for the love they'd had, and for the love she saw between Mira and James. Some things, she thought, were worth any price. In the Zethran brig, Cyrex made a decision. She released the human prisoners and sent them in escape pods toward Earth. Then she opened a secure channel to Dravok. "Marshal, we need to withdraw." "Withdrawal is surrender. Withdrawal is survival." Cyrex's voice was steady. "I've watched them fight. Studied their tactics. Marshal, they're holding back. Even now, with everything they've unleashed, they're restraining themselves. They're weak. They're terrifying." Cyrex interrupted. They fought for 3 days with weapons 3,000 years old, and they're winning. Imagine what they could do if they built new ones. If they decided to stop being merciful. Silence stretched across the channel. Finally, Drevok spoke, his voice hollow. Signal full retreat. The Zethran fleet broke formation and fled. Human forces didn't pursue. They simply stopped, watching the enemy run, and in that restraint was a message more powerful than any chase. We could destroy you, but we choose not to. Helena broadcast on all frequencies. To the retreating Zethran forces and any who are listening, humanity did not choose peace because we were weak. We chose it because we were too strong. We nearly destroyed ourselves and learned a terrible lesson. Today you forced us to remember what we fought to forget. But we will not become monsters again. We will return to peace. But the galaxy must understand, peace is our choice, not our nature. Test us again, and we will not be so merciful. The message rippled across the stars faster than light, carried by relay stations and merchant ships, whispered in alien councils and imperial courts. Humanity's secret was revealed, and fear spread in its wake. 6 months later, Earth bloomed again. Reconstruction had been swift, humanity's peaceful technologies adapting to repair what war had destroyed. The underground facilities were sealed once more. The ancient weapons returned to sleep. Takeshi and Helena and the other awakened soldiers faced a choice. Sleep again or stay in this changed world? Most chose sleep. We're relics, Helena told Mira before entering her pod. The galaxy needs humans of peace, not warriors. But we'll be here waiting if you need us again. She smiled faintly. Try not to, please. Takeshi squeezed Mira's shoulder. You reminded me why we fought. Take care of this future we bought with our past. As they slept, Octavia stood vigil, the last keeper of a secret that was no longer secret, but her burden felt lighter now. The truth was known, and somehow that made peace feel more real, not less. In New Geneva's rebuilt cathedral, Mira and James stood hand in hand. The ceremony was simple, attended by survivors who understood the fragility of peace and the strength required to maintain it. They spoke vows written in their own words, promising love, partnership, and hope. When they kissed, it wasn't just romance, it was defiance, a declaration that beauty could exist alongside memory, that gentleness could coexist with strength. Outside, children played in reconstructed parks. Humanity had returned to its peaceful ways, but with a difference. Now they taught their children about both peace and war, about restraint and capability, about the choice their ancestors had made, and the price of that choice. Mira took a position as director of historical memory, ensuring the truth would never be forgotten again. She wrote textbooks that didn't shy from humanity's violent past, but also celebrated their transformation. James designed new orbital platforms with defensive capabilities hidden in peaceful architecture. Hope for the best. Prepare for the worst. One evening, standing on their balcony overlooking a city that had died and been reborn, Mira felt James's arms circle her waist. She leaned into him, content. Do you think we'll have to fight again? She asked. I hope not. He kissed her temple. But if we do, we'll remember how to stop. That's the real lesson, isn't it? Not that we can fight, but that we can choose when to stop. Across the galaxy, the Zethran Empire had collapsed into infighting, traumatized by their defeat. But other empires watched Earth with new respect. Trade delegations arrived with careful courtesy. Territorial disputes near human space were quietly resolved. And in dark corners, whispered warnings passed between species. Never wake the silent ones. They chose peace, but they haven't forgotten war. Cyrex, stripped of rank but alive, published an account of the war. Her final words became famous. I thought humans were prey. I learned they were predators who chose to be gardeners. The galaxy should thank whatever gods it believes in that they made that choice, and should pray they never change their minds. Years passed. Mira and James had a daughter they named Hope, teaching her to appreciate peace while understanding its price. The orbital stations hummed with peaceful commerce. Research vessels explored new stars. Humanity rebuilt its gentle reputation, but now it rested on a foundation of honest strength rather than forgotten capability. And deep beneath Earth's surface, the machines slept, waiting. Not hidden, but resting, a reminder and a promise. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was kind, but not helpless, peaceful, but not weak, silent, but only until speech was necessary. The age of forgetting had ended. The age of honest peace had begun, and in that truth humanity found not fear but freedom. They could be gentle because they chose to be, not because they had forgotten how to be anything else. That choice, renewed each day, was their greatest strength. Peace, they had learned, wasn't the absence of the capacity for violence. It was the discipline to restrain it. And discipline, conscious and deliberate, was the hardest victory of all.